Hi class, in this section we're going to do a little bit of review of order of operations, and also they're going to be combining the actual fractions to these problems. Okay, so this is the basic idea. So as you review your actual problems, in terms of the parentheses, what they could do in this section is basically look at every single possible parentheses that you can have. And some of the problems may have notation from the past which contradicts what we did in those sections. Now, when they're referring to parentheses here, you're looking at the following parentheses. So you're talking about the regular parentheses. They could be talking about brackets, absolute values. Whoops, these are supposed to be absolute values. So we're talking about vertical lines, and then also one that you might have not seen in this section is they may actually throw, if the expression has multiple parentheses, the squiggly brackets. Now, for order operations, the squiggly brackets are going to serve as another set of parentheses. That's something that we basically had as defined as a set, but that was for the notation of the sets. And here, if you have a problem that they were to mention to simplify, and in this case, if the instructions are to simplify, then the squiggly brackets are not going to be defined as sets. And then another portion that you need to take into account as you're simplifying these problems is 3 and 4. So you're going to do multiplication or division. So basically, this means whichever one you see first from left to right. Also, addition or subtraction, whichever one you see first, and this one is from left to right. So the only step that you have to be very careful is with number 3, because you couldn't be adding if there's multiplications in between. Okay, so let's take a look at the first example. And on the first example, if we're following the order of operations, we have to be careful on the parentheses. In this case, there's no constant on the outside, and I'm talking about the outside of those parentheses. So you could actually drop the parentheses. They're not affecting any of the steps. And we're looking at the following. So this is 2 plus, and if we're going to work inside of the parentheses, you're going to have to do the exponents first. So this is 3 minus the values of 4 plus the values of 3. Now, you have to be careful on this actual term. What you technically have here is a negative 2 to the second. The exponent is only with the 2. It's not a negative 2. So this one represents a negative 2 times 2, or a negative 4. So that's what you're ending up with on the specific problem for the negative 2 to the second, not to confuse it with an actual, positive 4. Everything has to do with the parentheses. Now at this point, what we're looking at is this is 2 plus, and then in the inside of the parentheses, we're looking at 3 minus 4, or the values of negative 1, and then plus the values of 3. So the term inside of the parentheses ended up being a negative 1. At this point, I'm just going to follow the rules of order operations. I'm going to be doing step number 4, which deals with addition or subtraction from left to right. So we're going to end up with the following after we add the negative 2 plus the 1. This is simply 1 plus the values of 3. And our final answer is going to be technically the values of 4. That's our solution for the first problem. Let's take a look at the second one. And on the second one, we cannot drop these parentheses there because we technically have a constant of the 2. So before you do any addition with the 1 minus 3 with any value on the outside, that term has to be completed or completely simplified. Now you could do this multiplication as long as you're not affecting any of the other terms or combining it with any of the other terms. What we couldn't do here is combine the actual, and I'm referring to the actual 4 with the negative 2, because technically there's a multiplication that actually comes first, and we're talking about this step here. You cannot actually do addition or subtraction before the multiplication or division takes place. So in this case, let me rewrite it as this is equivalent to, and this is going to be a 4 minus 2 times 1 minus 3 is equal to a negative 2 squared, and then technically plus a negative 6. Now what I've done on the outside is multiply the actual 3 and the negative 2, that's the negative 6, and then combined the 1 minus 3. Now at this point, before you do the multiplication, you have to handle the exponents. So we're going to simplify this one and make sure you don't confuse it with the previous problem, which I also have in green here. And this one says it's a negative 2 squared, which represents a negative 2 times a negative 2, which is equal to a positive 4. And then as we technically rewrite this one, we're looking at this is a 4 minus a 2 times a negative 2 to the second happens to be a 4. I'm just going to rewrite it as the minus 6. And then the next step that has to take place here is the actual multiplication of the 2. Actually, in this case, negative 2 and the 4. So this is equivalent to 4 minus 8 minus 6. And I'm just going to follow the order of operations. But at this point, you can technically add them in any order. And from left to right, we're going to end up with the following. In this case, this is equivalent to 4 minus 8. That's a negative 4 minus 6. And our final answer for this one is equal to a negative 10. The only problem where we could have done this incorrectly here is if at the very beginning you would have added those two, but it doesn't actually apply. Okay, let me wait here a minute for you to work out the problem and see if we're matching. Now let's go to number C. And in number C, we're basically looking at the following. We're going to have to simplify the negative 1 to the second, and then also multiply the negative 1 and the negative 1 before those numbers get added to any other terms. So we're looking at this is equivalent to 4 plus a negative 1 squared is going to be plus a negative 1. So that's the result of the negative 1 squared. And then we still have this minus, and then the resulting values of negative 1 times negative 1 is going to be plus 1. So I'm just going to rewrite it as 1 plus the values of 5. So what we have from the negative 1 times the negative 1, that ended up being this one here. So let me go to the next step. And in the next step, we're basically looking at this is equivalent to 4 minus 1 minus another 1 plus 5. Or from left to right, this is 4 minus 1. This is equal to, well, technically 3 minus 1 plus 5. Or continue adding these from left to right. You're going to get 3 minus 1 happens to be 2 plus 5, or a final answer of a 7. Okay, let's go to problem D. And in problem D, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rewrite all the terms as fractions. So this is 1 over 1 minus 3/2 plus a 1/3. And then, well, notice that the LCD is equal to 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the LCD on every one of the terms. In this case, times 6 times 6. This one multiplied times 3 and times 3 times 2 and times 2. So you're going to be rewriting the first one as 6 over 6 minus 9 6s plus 2 6s. And since we combine all of these under one fraction, notice that everyone is under 6. I'm just going to be combining those three fractions as one. So this is equivalent to 6 minus 9 plus 2 over the values of 6. And then within the fraction, I'm going to be combining these from left to right. So for the first one, we're just looking at 6 minus 9 is equal to -3 plus 2. Don't forget this is over 6. And this is equivalent as to -3 plus 2 is equal to -1 6s. That's going to be our final answer for the first one.